And now I'm very excited to welcome back one of my favorite handicappers in Vegas and a top of the line chicken wing connoisseur. You've seen and heard him many times on Wager Talk TV. He's in watching Bet on It, Pony Pundits, and tons of radio stations all over America. I'm very happy to welcome back Mr. Marco D'Angelo from WagerTalk.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Marco in Vegas. Marco, your Steelers are out of the playoffs. Now what are we going to do? What's going on?
Well, probably for me, I'll have to go eat a big plate of chicken wings to, to get over it. But you guys always make fun of my food habits. But yet, every time you guys come to Vegas, the first question I hear is, "Where are we eating at?" So, let's tell the whole story. Yeah,
well, there's no better person to ask, though, Marco. I mean, that's like asking, Bill Gates about software or something. Okay. Right? We got to go to the source and find out what's best. So, but anyways, man, chicken wings are somewhat healthy. It's good for low carb diets. So just remember that I'm not against them. The sauce ain't even that bad. Now the blue cheese and ranch, we can have a separate argument about that.
But I can even take you a step further, and we don't even have to worry about the sauce because I know places that have very good dry rub seasoning wings too. So I got all the bases covered.
All right, well, I'll be visiting, and we'll definitely explore that angle on chicken wings, my man. So obviously, we have a huge NFL weekend. They're all huge now. I mean, big shocker. Look at the coaches that are still in it, right? I mean, especially in NFC. I mean, you have the four best
Mike McCarthy and Brandon Staley. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Nick Sirianni. It's just like you couldn't even make the line big enough in some of these games last week. And yeah, sometimes that's the way it is. But we have the four best coaches here in the NFC, probably, and the AFC, you got to just tip your hat to the Bengals. We're not completely sure about Taylor yet, Zach Taylor, but Vrabel has already shown he's pretty dang good, I think. And Andy Reid and the rest of them there, McDermott, you can't argue against those guys. They're right where they should be, aren't they?
They are, and it's. Last week was different, and one of the questions, and I know you're going to ask it for me, so I'll just jump to it. People always say, what's different about handicap in the playoffs? And, the first thing that I always say, and it's because I am such a big situational handicapper, is you don't get those situations in the playoffs that you get during the regular season, meaning I like to try to find spots where a team might have a flat spot, and we're looking for a live dog where a favorite might be vastly overpriced because of recent results, but they've got a big game next week, or they just came off a big game and this is a sandwich spot. There's no more of those type of situations. This is for all the marbles. Every game counts. Every game they come to play. So as far as trying to handicap emotion, you don't have to figure out who's showing up and who's not. Everybody's bringing their A game. But I will say we did have something different this year. And I think it's going to play into part of this week's games as well. And what I want to point out is historically, the wild card round has produced more underdogs than the other rounds. And the reason for that was under the old format, we had a couple of the division winners that would have buys, and then you'd have the wild card teams in there. So the games generally were a little more competitive. You had the wild cards, and then you had, the bottom end of the division winners. So there wasn't as big of a gap. But because of the new schedule this year, we saw an 18-week season, 17 games. So everybody had the extra game. They rewarded it by adding, extra teams to the wild card. But what changed is there was only one team from each conference that had the bye week. So we had some really good division winners playing some really bad wild card teams. So we saw a bigger discrepancy in the wild card round than we never saw before. And it's something that, unfortunately for me, I wish I could tell you that this dawned on me on Friday when I was putting all my wagers in. But it dawned on me after I started watching the first couple games on Saturday. I had all small plays last week except one play. I had one big play, and that was the Rams. And, got a little dicey. This point spread never got dicey, but if you sprinkled on the money line, you had to worry a little bit at the end there. But Mike McCarthy took care of that for us, so we didn't have to worry at the end there. But with that said, I think it's going to be a flip where historically this round in the past was very chalky. I don't think you're going to see that because we're getting those close matchups this year where you are getting good division winners facing one another in this round. And we'll talk about that as we break the games down.
All right. No, great call. And yeah, I wish I can not get tempted by that Eagles dog either. I mean, it was Tampa Bay was in shambles a little bit, banged up coming into this game, and coaching came through. I mean, the home field advantage was extraordinarily large, and you can attest that to crowd and officiating. But either way, we live and learn, but no surprise here coming into these playoffs. But man, these matchups are amazing. It's almost like whoever loses in the NFC here, you feel bad because they're just dang good, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're kind of like, man, somebody had to lose. The Niners or the Packers, man, the Tampa Bay or the Rams had to lose, right? It's just like all of them deserve to be in the Super Bowl as far as I can see. But man, that's going to make it pretty interesting for our next conversation, because why don't we get into these lines and start talking about that? Starting right away with rotation 301, 302. Cincy, looks like they were awarded the first game of the weekend once again, but they're going to play a well-rested Tennessee Titans. This line is now flat at -3.5, -110. The total is 47, Marco. You got the floor.
Yeah, this is one of those games right off the bat. We got two very good division winners hooking up, and you've got that 3 and a hook, and a lot of people were surprised that the hook was on there. And I said, the hook's got to be there because Vegas knows that there's going to be some extra love for Tennessee for two reasons. One, Cincinnati beat the local team, the Vegas Raiders, last week, and that was the only favorite that won, but was a little dicey as far as the point spread went. And then there was also, the little bit of the questionable call. And yes, the referees blew that, and no pun intended with the whistle there. But
right.
It should have been a down that was replayed. They should have waved the play off and did the down over. They did blow. There was a whistle. You could hear it. You could see the Raider player stop on the play. And it was an unfortunate situation. It doesn't mean that if they replayed the down that they weren't going to score. They could have still scored if they replayed the down, and then it would have been a moot point. Plus the fact that if they don't make it on third down, it's a chip shot field goal. So they were going to come away with something there. But everybody likes to have something to complain about, and the referees have been the target all season long, and they've been an easy one at Kiev. I mean, let's face it, this has been probably the worst officiated season in the NFL that I have seen. And I know that maybe it gets magnified more because we don't see every single play, but because of social media and people putting, their opinions out there, and then we see the replay of the clip of the play. We see every single questionable call. But as far as this game goes, Derrick Henry's back. How many times have you heard the saying, though, that, running back gets better as the game progresses? As he gets more carries, he gets better. Well, part of that reason is, especially if you're a back like Derrick Henry, you do wear down defenses, and, they just get tired of trying to tackle you. But part of it also is early in the game, it's establishing the rhythm of hitting the holes, hitting the open seams, and so forth. And that's for a player even that's, played all season long. When you've missed as much time as Derrick Henry has in coming into this playoff game, the advantage is he's fresh. He's got fresh legs. And the deeper they go, the more effective he is going to be with those fresh legs in the playoffs. But I think coming out of the gate, it's going to be a little bit slow. He's going to need reps to get back into that rhythm. You can't get that in practice. You can practice all you want, but you're never going to get the same game speed that you get in a game, hitting the holes and so forth. So I think coming out of the gate, Tennessee is going to be a little bit on the slow side. Maybe you want to, I'm on the Cincinnati side, but maybe you want to take a first half wager on Cincinnati, or even first quarter situation. Look for some plays as well, different ways to dissect this game. The other reason why I like Cincinnati is if they do get out to a quick start, that negates Derrick Henry even more in the game plan if Tennessee has to come from behind. So those are all factors that favor Cincinnati. I look at this Cincinnati team, and you look at Joe Burrow, and you look at the number of starts he's had. Remember, this is year 2 for him, but he didn't play a full season last year. So he's only about maybe a half a season, 8-9 games from actually still being a rookie. But he doesn't play like a rookie from the minute he's come into the league. And he's matured a lot this season, especially if you look at the last 5 games. You know how many turnovers Cincinnati has in the last 5 games? None. Yeah. That is the important part. And in the NFL, if you're on the plus side of the turnover battle, you've got a big leg up on winning the game. They've got a game under their belt already. I feel that's an advantage. The fact that they had to hold off a late Raider drive to secure that win, that's also an advantage, because if this game's tight late, I got to give the advantage to Cincinnati. They've already been there and done that in the playoffs this season. So I'm going to go with Cincinnati in this one. I think they get the win here. You've got, 2 good offensive teams. There's no question about that. Cincinnati 6-2 against the spread on the road this season. To me, that is another big indicator of a team that is, the real deal. When you can go on the road and dominate, you're the real deal. And that's when we get to another team and talk about them, why I don't think they're the complete package. And which team I'll be talking about, because there's no bigger home road dichotomy than them now that Arizona's out of the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. And well, I mean, I agree with you. I have this game metrically 25-25. I have Cincinnati even higher than Tennessee in my power ratings. Now, I will say that Cincinnati's defensive line and their injury woes worry me a little bit. Like Larry Ogunjobi's hurt, but it sounds like they're going to get their pass rusher and defensive end, Trey Hendrickson, back. So they got some guys to fill in. But the biggest thing for me for this spread, Marco, is that Cincinnati can keep up. I mean, with Burrow, with Jamar Chase, right? They have a powerful offense. So, yeah, let's just say they can't stop the run, and maybe Tennessee's milking the clock on it. They can still get through Tennessee's defense. And I think Tennessee's defense is good, and they beat up on the bad teams. But, and they have surprised some big, great teams like the Rams, and I think maybe Tampa and a couple others. But at the same time, Cincinnati is been a scoring machine, and Joe Burrow, it ranks at number 2 in quarterback EPA plus completion percentage over expectation. He's just got fantastic numbers. Now, I'm going to take away, or I'm not going to take away the stats for Cincinnati's leave it game. That week 18, they didn't play anybody, but you have to remember that Tennessee was injured, right? So I'm like, you know what? I can't compile exactly that Tennessee, how much they went down, even though I know they went down some when AJ Brown was out, when Julio Jones was out, and Henry. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm just going to include Cincinnati's stats in my metrics for that last game where the Browns beat the heck out of them. Well, in yards anyway, not points. But it still came out, pretty close. Titans are a negative 0.3 net yards per play. All right, that tells you something right there. They're getting through by good coaching and things like that. But the Bengals, I don't think that they should be dogs over 3. And I mean, if I'm making this line and I'm in Vegas, I would probably rather put it at 3. But like you said, you made great points that, people are going to be on Tennessee being the number 1 seed, and obviously Cincinnati beat Las Vegas. So I like the Bengals here. I got them a little bit above average in defense and more above average in offense. So total agreement here, Marco.
The one thing I'll say about Tennessee, if you go back and look at their season when Henry first went down, and they had that incredible 4-week stretch where they beat Buffalo, they beat Kansas City, they beat Indianapolis in a game that Carson Wentz gave them the game.
They did, yep.
And then after those 3 games, and I thought, oh man, after playing, they had revenge games with Buffalo and Kansas City, and then virtually locked up the division when they beat Indianapolis because they had already beaten them earlier in the year. So they had all the tiebreakers and a 2-game lead, I think at that time, 2 or 3-game lead at that time. When they went to the Rams, I said, there's just no way that 4th week they could bring it again. And they got that Sunday night win against the Rams. But if you remember, that was the game that Matthew Stafford had his worst game of the season, and he had those 2 horrible picks, the one out of his own end zone when he threw, in instant touchdown for Tennessee. But that 4 weeks, Tennessee looked like, the best team in the NFL. But then around that stretch, there's been those spots where they've been mediocre or struggled with teams that they should have blown away.
You mean they lost to Houston?
Yeah. I actually like that one a lot. I was on board Houston that one because it was the week before the New England game, and it was just it was a trap. But I didn't expect. Let me say, when I made my Houston bets that day, I was looking at covering the spread.
Yeah,
I wasn't looking at. I didn't have too much money line sprinkle there for that one.
Well, I'll tell you this. They got their butts kicked at home, and I think they're fortunate. KC was not KC the first 8 weeks as of they were, and we'll get into that game the last 9-10 weeks. I truly believe that, and I also think that that Rams little skid was during Matt Stafford's downtime, and that was that just 3 games in a row they lost. They got their butts kicked by San Fran. The Rams lost to somebody else they shouldn't have lost to. They lost to the Packers as well, which is understandable, but they got beat bad by the Packers. So they had a skid there, and the Titans were fortunate to kind of catch teams on the down, and then you see who they really were. Now, I will say, of course, they were injured against Houston, but still, you got to freaking win that game. Unreal. Let's move on to the next one then. We have the Packers hosting the San Francisco 49ers, rotation 303 and 304. -6 is the spread. Kind of getting down, bending down a little bit to -5.5, depending on where you're looking. Total of this game is 47. Now, the narrative, obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo's now got shoulder injury as well as his thumb and all these things kind of building up. Fred Warner's hurt a bit, but he's supposed to play. Joey Bosa, I still haven't had an update on. But I think this is why the spread is so big. I was expecting the Niners being more of a public dog, and I was possibly expecting this number to go down more, but I'm not seeing it. What are your thoughts, Marco?
Yeah, we went long on the last game, so I will go short on this one because this is the game that has been the toughest for me to handicap this week. The metrics say the 49ers plus the points, and a lot of sharps that I know that I do respect do like the 49ers as well. The problem with this one has been that you've got the 49ers in a very bad scheduling spot. Now, we talked at the onset about, hey, everybody comes to play and, you don't worry about situational things, but this is one that is just, it's there and you can't ignore it. They're playing their 3rd straight road game and 4th road game in the last 5. And the last 2 road games were monster games where it was pedal to the metal. They played San Francisco the Rams the final week of the season where they had to win to get their playoff spot secured, and they had to come back from 17 down in that game to send it to overtime. And then, of course, you go on the road and go into Big D and upset the Cowboys. Now you got to go on the road and go to Lambeau. There will also be a lot of people that are going to say, oh, well, you got a warm weather team playing in Lambeau. Yeah, you do. But it's the playoff time. We'll be okay. Don't worry. They'll be all right on that aspect. and then throw in the injuries. Where I'm going to look to this game is I'm going to look to the over. And here's why. For San Francisco to beat Green Bay, they need the same game plan that they had last week. So on paper, everybody's going to look and say, okay, hey, man, that was brilliant coming out with the running game the way they did and using Samuel, the wide receiver, as the running back the way they did. And Dallas didn't have an answer for that. That's fine. They didn't. They kept Dallas off the field. They, ran against a soft run defense. You need to do that against Green Bay. The problem is, do you run the same game plan 2 weeks in a row when Green Bay's sitting there and, looking at what you just did to Dallas, and they're going to be better prepared for that? So I think that this is a situation that, and with all the talk of Garoppolo and being banged up and this and that, if I'm designing my game plan, yeah, maybe later I pound the rock the way they did against Dallas, but I'm going to come out just the opposite. And I'm going to use what you think I'm going to do as my decoy. And I'm going to have some play action passes lined up early that is going to take a shot downfield. And then you know how it is. If you can get one of those, 1 or 2 quick scores in a game early, it can change the entire dynamic of a game, because then it's, come back and answer. And also you have the dynamic, if Green Bay gets on top by 2 scores, well, that running game goes out the window. Now you got to try to keep up to Aaron Rodgers. I like the over in this one. I think the public perception would be that this is an under game because the 49ers are indeed going to try to run the football and shorten the game. I think they're going to take a couple shots early, and if they are successful and get me 1 or 2 scores, get me 7 to 10 points early, it just changes the dynamic. And this is probably the weakest vote of the 4 I'll have for you, but I like the over 47.5.
Well, great minds think alike, because that's when I played already and gave it out on the earlier show this week. I bet the over, and I'm kind of disappointed that it didn't go up. It's actually down to 47. I did it at 47.5, and if this gets down, I might hit it again. These two teams played each other. The Packers were winning that game handily, and then they came back. A little bit of, I think they got a little nudged by the officiating, but the Niners became a better team after that, and they were really injured earlier in the season, if you remember. So they can move the ball. Green Bay 3rd in offensive EPA, San Francisco 6th in offensive EPA. The defenses aren't great. They allow at least field goals, and sure, they tighten up, but San Fran 15th on defensive EPA, and their secondary is not good at all. Their secondary is very weak. And because they're going from incompetence in Dallas, which is total incompetence, that game, complete incompetence, to a well-rounded Matt LaFleur who knows Shanahan, who's got the best quarterback in the league right now, and Aaron Rodgers. They are going to get hit in the mouth, that defense. Now, will they score some points? I think so. Deebo Samuel is going to have a great game. George Kittle is going to have a great game. I think the Packers win, but there's no way in heck I'm laying 6, and I actually lean to the Niners at 6. But the problem is my number is 28-24, so I'm at a 4-point spread. Not like running to the window to bet a 6 on a 4-point spread here, because the spot, like you said, they just went through a battering ram pretty much the last 3-4 weeks here just to get to the spot, man. I can't just imagine them keep getting up and just getting beat up, man. The metrics don't work for the Packers because the whole fourth quarter in most of their games, they're just getting out. They're trying to get the hell out of there, right? And that's a problem. There's not a lot of metric sites that stop at the third quarter. Some give you like DVOA, they give their own sauce to it, but you don't see their formulas. I agree with you though. I'm taking the over on this game. Glad we agree. Let's move on to the next game. We have the Los Angeles Rams versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this spread is like 2.5, 3. 2.5 juiced. If you're taking a +3, you're at +100. It's maybe 2.75. We can call it whatever. Total is at 48 here, 48.5. Now, what I will say is there's a lot of love for the Rams, Marco. I'm really this is the most intriguing game to me. And I'm really curious to hear what you have to say.
Well, full disclosure, I had Arizona on Monday, okay? And that was, complete shit show by Arizona. But whenever on all the shows I did last week, I said, I like Arizona, and I'll explain why. And I said, but I'm going to say this. I really do believe if the Rams win this game in advance, I think they go to the Super Bowl. And why I was saying that was coming into the playoffs, I think the most pressure on any single player entering the playoffs was Matthew Stafford, because he was supposedly the final piece of the puzzle in LA. They made the offseason, blockbuster trade. They gave up the draft choices and everything to get him. And yes, as long as he's been in the league, never won a playoff game. Well, he only had 3 of them. And of course, he was with Detroit. So the narrative there is, well, he didn't have anybody around him other than when Megatron was there. But They never had a running game complement the passing game. You couldn't have that excuse anymore. You have a team with a great defense. You have a team with weapons all over the field. You went out and got, Odell Beckham. You've got Cooper Kupp. I mean, there's no excuses anymore. So the pressure was squarely on him. And to be honest, although they did win 5 of their last 6 games, they turned the ball over a lot. Last 3 games, 8 turnovers. You don't win playoff games turning the football over like that. But he got the monkey off his back, Kiev, and now I think he can just grow from that. And the momentum. Now you got the monkey off your back. You can win a playoff game. Now you go in. Yes, you got to play Tom Brady, and that does get in a lot of people's minds. But you already played him. You already beat him this season. So you have that confidence factor. And everybody's going to want Tom Brady. When I say everybody, I'm going to talk the average bettor, John Q. Public, is not going to want to take Tom Brady, go against Tom Brady. They're going to look at a line. Anytime they see a line of 3 or less in the NFL, in their minds, they have that little voice in their head that says, oh, just pick the winner. That's all I got to do here. Lines, 2.5, 3, Tom Brady, playoffs, home. Look at what they've done at home this year, and they're going to want them. This is the game where Brady will miss the added weapons. Evans had a big game last week. That was against Philadelphia, okay? The Rams will take Evans out of this game. For Tampa to win this game, they're going to need another player to step up. How many catches can Gronk get? You're going to need somebody else other than those 2 marquee players for them to win this game. And we know that Tom Brady, as good as he is, if you can get pressure in his face and knock him down a couple times, he's a different quarterback. And that's what the Rams can do. I like the Rams to win this game.
All right. So for this one, I'm not saying I disagree with this one. We haven't disagreed yet. We agreed on both our last 2. And I was heavy on the Rams this year when Tampa Bay played them. I mean, that line was pick them, and it was in LA, and the Rams had all this momentum. I used that in the contest too, and I was happy about that. But this is a different animal to me. I mean, Tampa could be getting a little bit healthier. And it's not like they're getting Godwin back and Antonio Brown's in the nut house somewhere, right? Hopefully, anyway. But Tom Brady's part of his magic is finding the quiet guy and just making him look like a freaking star. And you got guys like Rashard Perryman, you got Scotty Miller there. You still have Tyler Johnson, who I've said before would start for other teams had he not be on a loaded Tampa. Now I'm looking at the injury report. Levante David's limited practice. Is Levante David coming back? That's interesting. Leonard Fournette expected to return this week. I don't know if he does. My biggest problem is Tristan Wirfs. I don't like the fact that their tackle's out, and that worries me against this Rams. Now the Rams only look like they're 25th in pressure rate, but I don't believe those stats. Tampa's number 2 in pressure rate, but you saw what they did to Arizona. They beat the heck out of Kyler Murray, and part of that season was without their pass rusher they got from Denver. What's his face?
Von
and
Miller.
Von Miller. Yeah, right. Von Miller. So it's like, why would I go against a Rams team that is 8-1 against the spread their last 9 games against Tampa Bay? But at the same time, Tom Brady's been burning Sharps money for so freaking long. We say it every time. The public's going to be on Brady, but this is where the public keeps sports betting, Marco, because he's carried them for years. My number is 27-24 with Tampa winning. I am not touching this game, and nothing would surprise me, Marco.
The only thing I'll say to you, the one thing you said about, Tampa puts pressure on. One of the reasons Tampa can put pressure on is because generally they've had big leads where the other team becomes one dimensional and you can pin your ears and go after the quarterback. And speaking of quarterbacks, I am just going to run down the last 10 weeks of the schedule of what Tampa has faced. Let's start it with Washington, and we know all of the problems they had with quarterbacks and COVID and everything. They weren't scoring points. Then they faced the Giants and whatever quarterback they could wheel out there. They had 3 quarterbacks there, and you could put the 3 together and not make a good quarterback in New York this year.
So bad.
After that, they did play Indianapolis. Okay. And whenever I got to say Carson Wentz was the best quarterback that you faced over the last 10 weeks of the season, that's not a good statement for the strength of quarterbacks that you faced. And Carson Wentz put 31 points up against Tampa, but he also gave Tampa, the game with the bad interception at the end of the game. And after Indianapolis, they faced Atlanta and Matt Ryan, who Matt Ryan was at the end, is at the end of his career like Ben was. They did face Buffalo and Josh Allen. So Carson Wentz wasn't the best quarterback, but that was a game that was right down to the wire, 33-27, a heartbreaker because I had Buffalo plus the points and lost in overtime.
Well, I had the Indianapolis, and that freaking touchdown when it should have been a field goal killed me, Marco.
Exactly. But again, then the next teams to run through: New Orleans with no quarterback, Carolina, Jets, Carolina again, and then Philadelphia in the playoffs. This is a dynamic offense that can run and pass with the Rams. And as long as Matthew Stafford doesn't throw 3 interceptions, I don't see Tampa containing the Rams offense. That's my point. The Rams have played a much tougher schedule down, over the last 10 weeks of the season than the Buccaneers. Buccaneers have played 2 playoff teams in 10 weeks. Rams have played 5. Half of their schedule in the last 10 were playoff teams.
So I will say this. Sean McVay is a fantastic coach. And if he's calling the other Sean and Sean Payton on the phone, that's what I would be doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they could win this game.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's another reason why I'm staying off it, because the Saints just know Tampa Bay and they know Tom Brady, and they beat him, and they beat him 9-0 with a skeleton crew in Tampa. Right. So that's the horn I'm getting on. I am definitely not betting either side personally, but you make a great case. So thank you for that. Let's move on to the final one then. We have the Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs. And the spread, I mean, so there's 2s, there's 1.5s, there's 2.5s. I'm going to call it 2. Is that fair? We'll call it -2. The total is 53.5. And Marco, I'll go first. So I'll put myself at the disadvantage instead of you. I didn't bet this yet, but I think I will. This is another one where I was on Buffalo when they won. They went into Kansas City and beat the crap out of them. I saw so much weakness in Kansas City. But then something clicked with Kansas City, and maybe it was that Raiders game, or maybe it was the Cowboys game where they beat the crap out of the Cowboys, or both. But they kind of changed then. It must have been after the Packers game against Jordan Love. That's what it was. They looked like crap against Jordan Love. And then, I mean, Buffalo, they whooped them, but this is a different animal too, because I'm looking at, like, in order for me to gauge the Chiefs, if I run the algorithm, they lose this game because I'm using the first 8 weeks, and they were pitiful, especially the first. I mean, it was so bad, it's ruining it. It ruins the spreads. My power ratings have 2.5, 3 here, depending about what you're doing for home field advantage. My algorithm has Buffalo winning, but I think I've got to go with Kansas City. I mean, since week 9, Kansas City ranks second in offensive EPA, Buffalo ranks eighth, and Kansas City ranks seventh in defense, and Buffalo ranks eighth. Kansas City's defense came out of nowhere when they got Jones back, and they put a lot of pressure up the middle. They're playing a lot of single high safety, Marco, meaning they're putting the pressure on. So that's what you're saying. You're saying, Josh Allen, let's see you throw the ball past 10 yards. Let's see you throw the ball and complete it. And if you beat us, you beat us. And I think that's what they're going to do. But my problem with Josh Allen is that he's very inconsistent. It takes him when he got going last week, he ran the ball. You remember he had like a huge 40-yard yard, right? Chunks of yards. And then it got him his confidence, and just the Buffalo just pours it on. But if that doesn't happen because Kansas City's ready for it, and they're going to say, I want you to start beating us, maybe that old 53% back at Wyoming completion percentage shows its ugly face. Kansas City's defense isn't as good as Buffalo still, but from what I saw since week 9, it's not far behind. I know Josh Allen looked great versus the Patriots, but the inconsistency here, and then you have Kansas City with Mahomes. I heard what Travis Kelce had to say. He said anything below a Super Bowl is a failed season. I think they believe that. I'm going to be Joe Public, and I'm probably going to bet Kansas City, Marco. What are your thoughts?
Well, this is going to be the first one we disagree on. And normally I would say, and you asked me first question of the thing about what's different playoffs than regular season. If this was a regular season game, I would be all over Kansas City. And the reason being, Buffalo played an absolutely perfect game last week. You've heard me throw out the phrase fat and sassy a million times. Buffalo would be that candidate for fat and sassy, because not only did they have a big win, they scored touchdowns on first 7 possessions the game.
I don't think they punted or anything.
It was a perfect offensive performance, and it was done against your arch nemesis, the team that has just beat you down in the division for years and years and years. So, yeah, they would be ripe for, a letdown. But this is the playoffs. And just like Kelce said for KC, anything short of the Super Bowl is unacceptable. And for Buffalo, they got very close. They got to the top of the mountain, but they weren't able to punch their flag, at the crest of the mountain. And if you go back and think about Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes, looks pretty similar to the journey. Remember, KC had all those seasons that were really good, and then they get to that AFC Championship game, and who's sitting there? Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. You got to earn your credibility or whatever, or, pay your dues, whatever cliche you want to use. And, he didn't get it done the first year, but he grew from it. And then, come back and there's that, your dragon still sitting there. Then he finally slayed it. Well, Buffalo got to that dragon last year. They got to the AFC Championship game, and who was standing in front of them? Kansas City and Mahomes. And, the veteran won the first battle. We got the revenge during the regular season, but trust me, getting the regular season revenge for getting knocked out of the playoffs and being that close to the Super Bowl, they still feel that they don't have their revenge yet. In Buffalo, I think, will be here to play. And Josh Allen, you can get that Josh Allen from his senior year at Wyoming, or you can get Josh Allen that you had him in a sophomore year, which was a different story. I don't know why all of these Mountain West quarterbacks seem to get all the hype coming into their last season, and then their draft stock drops a little, because same thing happened to Jordan Love, his final season. But I like him here, and it is for that one reason that you mentioned. If a play breaks down, he has the ability to extend a 3rd and 8 when Kansas City has everybody covered. And yes, the Kansas City Chiefs, the second half of the season, are not the same team you saw the first 8 weeks of the season. 2 major differences. One was the defense got much better. They got back a couple people that were banged up earlier in the season. That gave them stability. The other thing was Kansas City quit turning the football over. Okay. The defense got better just from the fact that they weren't on the field all the time because they kept giving up possessions with turnovers. And if you look at the stats from the first half of the season to the second half of the season, Kansas City's always going to be pass happy, but they were a little bit more balanced the second half of the season, which changed time of possession for Kansas City, because we're used to seeing Kansas City going down the field and having 3-minute drives. Well, those are nice when you score touchdowns. The bad part of it is you put your defense right back out on the field, and a defense that was a little suspect in playing more plays is always going to be exposed. And those are the 2 differences. So I will say that much for KC, but I think this is Buffalo's time. I think Buffalo, top to bottom, offensively and defensively, are the most complete AFC team. And I will say this much. It's one of my other old adages. You give me the better defense, getting points. Now, granted, it's only 2, but still, Buffalo's the better defense. They're the number 1 defense in yards per play. And Kansas City, again, these are season-long metrics. They're 28th at yards per play. It has changed dramatically the second half of the season, but there's still a big gap. I got to go Buffalo.
All right. No, that's fair enough. And you made a good argument. One thing that's weird, I am under the total, and you would think that, I mean, 54, 55 points, but it's not creeping up as fast as I thought. So I think there's other people thinking like, I didn't take the under. I'd be scared to take the under in this game. Personally, I think maybe first half under is something I might look at. I think that could be interesting. They kind of come out just feeling each other out a little bit. But yeah, in general, I think that Kansas City's just got the mojo, and they have the experience, and they have the coach as well. But yeah, you made a great point. I think. Do you think this goes down to pick 'em, or do you think this sticks around 2?
I could see it going down another half a point to 1.5. I don't see it going back up the other way. And the only reason I say that is John Q. Public, yes, is going to bet Kansas City. And I think as we get closer to game day, when you see, there's a lot of different sites that, give you betting splits and so forth, you're going to see the number of tickets are going to be shaded more to Kansas City. But anytime that this would tick off of 2, the Sharps are going to take Buffalo. Okay. And they're going to eliminate this line going up. And, in the Sharps may end up, driving us down to 1.5. But I don't see it going back to 2.5. More chance of going to 1.5.
All right, fair enough, man. Great analysis on that one, Marco. We got another minute here. Got to ask you about the Derby. You love your ponies. You do a great job over at Wager Talk. And I just, me and you obviously going to get together with Chris and everything and do the Kentucky Derby and all that fun stuff. What do you have for futures? Is there any horses there that you or Sig may have looked at, and anything that might have a little potential value coming into the Derby?
Yeah, I will say I bet one a few weeks back in we bet it at Circa, and we killed the odds at Circa with a few of us that liked the same horse, and that horse's name was Rocket Dog, and it was one of those made his maiden debut, and it was out of the Brad Cox barn. And if you follow horse racing at all over the last 3 seasons, Brad Cox has been one of the winningest trainers on the highest level. That horse raced so good in his maiden debut. And what I was impressed about was the fact that he didn't break well in that race. He was mid-pack. A lot of times you'll see these maiden races where the horse just busts out of the gate and rolls. Well, this horse had adversity in that race and overcome it and won going away. And we jumped on him after that one. Well, then when he ran a second race, took a major step backwards. So going into this weekend is one of the first races on the Derby Trail, prep races. There's a horse, Epicenter, and he is currently at 33-1 at Circa. I like this horse. He's had 3 starts so far. His first one was nothing major, but then the light bulb went off in his second start, and then in his third, and won easily. And then in his third start, they stretched him out and ran 2 turns for the first time. That's usually the big first test for 2-year-olds. And he responded in a huge way. Won going away in that race by 6.5 under wraps. Picks up Joel Rosario, 33-1 right now at Circa. Go make a bet on him for a future bet, because if he does what I think he's going to do at the fairgrounds on Saturday, 14th race, if he wins that race, you're never going to see 33-1 again on this horse. So that would be my early tip. And there's going to be a lot of races in the next, coming weeks that we will say, and Sig and I do a show, Pony Pundits, at Wager Talk. We were on hiatus, in December. We're back with the first show of the season for this race. And you're going to hear us almost every week saying, you know what, here's a horse that's sitting at this price. Get it now, because that price might not be there after Saturday.
Epicenter. Who's his trainer?
His trainer is Steve Asmussen.
Steve Asmussen. Awesome, man. No, that's great. Hopefully he goes away. And I'm seeing him on some of the other offshore books as well at 33-1. So make sure you guys grab that. Marco, where could our listeners get your great information and plays this weekend?
Hey, head over to wagertalk.com. You can check everything out there. We've got a lot of free plays there. Yes, it's a pick selling site, but Kiev, we do so much free content over there. Check out our YouTube channel and just, search for Wager Talk TV, and then hit that subscribe button. You won't miss a show. And it's not just football, guys. We've got experts in every single sport, whether it be football, basketball, hockey, Japanese baseball, UFC, you name it. We have somebody that covers it, and a lot of free information and a lot of shows that are actually like going to class. It's handicapping 101. You learn different things from different guys.
Awesome, Marco. Thank you so much for coming on and delighting us with all of your fantastic information, my man. Best of luck this weekend. We'll be texting each other.
No problem. I always enjoy doing your show, and we kept our streak alive. The over on time cashes again.
It always does, my man. Talk to you soon.